Greetings, webheads, and welcome to episode 13 of Witty Banter, yet another Marvel Crisis Protocol podcast. I'm Patrick.
I'm Alex.
I'm David.
I am Pain.
Every time the voice keeps getting deeper. I'm impressed. I like it. We are here to help you get better at and have more fun with your Crisis Protocol. We are gonna our main episode topic today. We're gonna do another in our series of how to deal with. We're gonna talk about how to deal with webs because they're kind of the current menace to the community. It seems like, and I know I have certainly spent late nights thinking about how in the world to deal with them. So maybe we can have some conversation about it too. We want to do a little business beforehand. The next episode 14, we will be doing our next giveaway. Gentlemen, what are we giving away in this next episode?
That fat box.
It is a fat box. I mean, this is a pretty good giveaway.
The chunky butts, 19 threats worth of shit.
Yeah, Asgard coming your way. So we are
Sif looks legit.
Can't count.
It does.
20 threat
Sif
worth
looks
of
legit. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I'm excited both for the models and the characters. So episode 14, next episode, we will be giving away the Asgard box. So if you want to be in on this good stuff, you can get some entries to the giveaway. Alex, how do you get entries to the giveaway?
Be part of the Patreon. You can get an extra entry for $1. You can get 2 entries for $5, or you can get an entry for leaving reviews and showing us that you left said review on any of the socials.
That's right. So come and join us at the Patreon, patreon.com/wittybantercast. In addition to helping us keep the lights on, you're also entered into the drawings. And then if you can like, rate, and review us on whichever podcast app of your choice, not only will that get you an entry into drawing, but it will also help us out, help other people find us, help grow the community. So we would very much appreciate it.
We'll consider firstborns too, right? How many would that be worth? A firstborn child?
I don't know.
5? 10?
I'd give him the box.
You just give him a straight box for a firstborn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that ends
You
up
can
being
have
more
my
work.
firstborn.
Yeah, I was about to say it feels like that ends up being more work than it's worth. I feel like somebody should be giving us stuff if we're going to be raising kids.
I was thinking like organ harvesting, but I guess we could
Oh,
raise them too.
I suppose. Man, this episode got dark fast. I like it. So, before we get started, though, we at our local friend of the local gaming store, over the late summer and early fall, we are going to be starting kind of a fun, different event. Alex, you're running it. Can you tell the webheads, give us kind of a description of what it is that we're looking to be doing?
So we plan on starting this league because tournament season kind of at the beginning of August, or at least locally for us, our tournament season is over roughly around the beginning of August. For us, it'll be Show Me Showdown will be the last tournament that we plan on traveling to locally, with the exception of some possible random ones that pop up here and there. But for the most part, tournament season's over after Show Me Showdown for us. So to kill the negatives behind tournament play, which in my opinion is not bad or good, it's just a different way to play, and to try to get the spirits up of everybody so that way we can get away from the tournament mindset, is to run a fun draft league. And in this league, we had discussed for the most part, most everybody local, or at least our more common players, had discussed a little bit as to what we'd like to see and what we would like to do. So we ended up going with the decision of doing a draft league, an S-style draft league. And for those of you that are not familiar on how that works, it starts with player one. For example, 5 players are in it. Player one, player two, player three, player four, player five, and then in reverse order, starting with player 5 and so on. And you just pick one model every time it's your turn to pick. But the real interesting part with this one is I made the decision that as long as 50% of your roster is affiliated, your entire roster is affiliated. So that means any tactics cards will work with any model because technically they will all be considered affiliated, and there wouldn't be any kind of affiliation restriction when it comes to squad building either. So you could have just your leader, and everybody else could be splash models, for example.
So basically, for those of you who have crossover, we're anybody that's into fantasy football. We're also very much into fantasy football season, and this is kind of where we cross the streams. So it's a fantasy football style draft, except instead of drafting Patrick Mahomes, you're drafting um, Rhino. It'll. I don't know that we're looking. I think to kind of do some quirky stuff with the crises too. I think, is that right, Alex?
Yeah, I was thinking of doing some interesting things with the crises, and like all the new terrain that's been coming out. It's been coming out with rules for one shots, that have different special rules, specifically with how the terrain interacts with the game, and it affects the threat levels possibly. One other thing I was thinking of doing, if we can get enough people locally interested in Mojo Ball, play some Mojo Ball. Um, and then like you just kind of tweaking some of the crises itself, like the ones that are currently out. One example Patrick you gave me was instead of moving the researcher any direction that you want, if you control it, you have to move it towards the intended, or what was supposed to be the intended evac point that you're going for.
It's just it's a little bit of an opportunity since your roster building's done in a really completely different way. It's just kind of a little opportunity to get everybody let their freak flag fly a little bit and try some different stuff, and play Crisis Protocol in a little different way. So we'll be running that. We're going to be starting in, I think, in the next month or so, and we will keep you We'll keep you updated on what's happening. If you have any questions about it or any suggestions for how to run the league, if you've done one of these, I've done one of these before, and it's a ton of fun. If you have any suggestions about how we can do it better, drop us a line in the comments or send us a message on the socials or an email, and we'd love to hear from you. So we'll keep you abreast on that. So now we're move into our main topic, which is how to deal with. We talked about kaijus last time, which ended up being a pretty robust discussion. But now we just have one topic rather than going through all the different kaijus and all the different ways that you handle things. Sort of feels like we're doing the opposite end of the spectrum. Now it's how to deal with web warriors. David, you've been doing a ton of playing with webs lately. Why don't you, as we start the conversation, why don't you just kind of talk about what the affiliation's like, what it is they want to do, how they're put together, and why they're such a frickin' menace.
Well, I mean, webs, they are probably the best crisis team or affiliation in the game. Like they can easily, they can just like run score up on you, and they can do it quickly. And like they have 2 in affiliation steals. They've got like so much mobility. Like they're good at, and they got survivability.
They have
Like
3 in
everything that you
affiliation
want.
steals.
Thank you, JP. I was just gonna say they have 3 steals.
Oh,
They got
what am I
Miles,
missing?
Spider Woman, and Black Cat.
And Cat. Yeah, I forgot about Spider Woman. So yeah, they have three of them.
I'm embarrassed to say that I forgot about Spider Woman.
Yeah, yeah.
Damn, that's your boo.
I know. I'm sorry.
Well, and
Jesus.
she's in my roster too.
She's in your spank bank, but you forgot to bring her up during the episode. Come on, man.
I feel bad. I feel bad. She's gonna be mad at me.
But yeah, they're just. I mean, they're annoying. They're fast. They want to make it so that they want to force you to commit move actions rather than attack actions. And like, if they got you doing that, that's like it's pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, basically, almost everything else in the game, at some level, there's just sort of this instinctive thought that you're playing a game because you want to have superheroes beating up on supervillains and supervillains beating up on superheroes or whatever. And Webs doesn't really care about that. I mean, if they can really win a game without ever throwing a punch, right?
Well,
They
and
are
that's
the best at being pussies, that's for sure.
that's
Exactly.
true.
So
I think they. I mean, at least they play like how you would think that like those characters would want to play. Like they would care about saving the civilians before trying to like engage in villains.
Well,
Right,
exactly.
so
If you look at all the movies that have been out, animated or not, and even the TV shows, cartoons, even the comics, their main thought and objective is to get people out of there. Peter Parker didn't, see a civilian hanging off of a building and say, fuck them, we're gonna go punch Green Goblin. Well, except Gwen Stacy, but that's a different story.
or
I might have to disagree with you guys. Lately, they've been all megalomaniac, taking pictures of themselves punching people.
that's true.
well,
That's
we
only
haven't had
because there's a tactics card for it.
Yeah, and they've got a multi-camera setup. It's like a porno.
and that's not even a conversation about emo Peter Parker
Listen,
from
J.
Children's
Jonah
Show.
Jameson has to get his pictures.
That's true. That is true. Peter's got to pay to help Aunt May get her wedding ring on a hawk, right? So before we get into it, let's make it a little more concrete. What can you expect a Webs roster to look like? What's in a Webs roster? Let's maybe start from there. So, I mean, obviously they all look different and they're going to have a little bit of a different flavor, but for the most part, if you're sitting down and you're going to see Webs at the other end of on the other side of the table, what is it that you're going to be seeing?
Well, I mean, I think the start of a good web roster is. I mean, you're gonna take Cat Miles, Gwen, probably Spectacular, and ASM, and then kind of build around whatever you want to do there after. Like some people like Spider Woman, some people like um
Ben,
Scarlet Spider. He's pretty good. Um, I haven't had a chance to try out Sable now that she's a web warrior, but I don't know what to do with her in webs.
she was a random webs drop, but that's a different conversation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I get it. I get it thematically, but I'm not sure it fits into the roster.
I don't even know if I get it thematically because, like, Silver Sable was like, "I'm here to hunt you, Peter Parker." Oh, turns out the guy that is a bigger problem wants to hunt you too, but I want you instead. Let's beat up the bad guy, and then I
And
leave town.
well, it was either she was going to be a web warrior or a spider foe, and she wouldn't have felt right in spider foes. So if you're going to pick between the two, because she showed up in Spider-Man comics all the time,
Oh yeah,
She's Crimson Defenders too, right?
she is
yeah,
Defender. I think
yep.
that's
She's
right.
Criminal Syndicate too.
I think that's right. You mentioned Miles. Is there any thought that anybody other than Miles is realistically going to be a leader for Webs?
I mean, ASM's leadership is okay. So like it's hard because none of the webs slow. So like it's you're like having to like activate somebody, slow somebody, and then have another activation where you get the displacement off of it, so it just becomes weird. You have to like set it up. I really only like ASM in the mirror versus another web roster.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I don't know if I necessarily would take the leadership for the displacement. They've got plenty of it on their own. I feel as though the benefit of ASM's leadership is the slow.
The slow, yeah.
That's
Especially versus webs.
I could see taking it versus Kingpin too, because not
Yeah.
only is Kingpin filled with a bunch of potatoes, but counting as two and being able to move him off the point is pretty big deal.
Yeah, I don't hate it against Kingpin either, but I mean nowadays Kingpin's not super common.
He's not super common. Should we okay, maybe should we talk about what people's what people are having issues with webs?
That's kind of what I thought. I kind of thought we'd set the table in terms of what webs are, and then we talk about, then you get an idea of what they are and how to counter them. So we got an idea in terms of what the roster looks like. In terms of tactics cards, what are web staples, and why are they staples? Why are they good?
Well, I mean, they're obviously going to take webbed up because that card is just stupid.
They need one round of not being pussies.
Yeah.
I mean,
pretty good round.
It's webbed up is just good. And for all those who don't know, webbed up is any web warrior within can spend 3 power and put slow on all enemy models within range 3, and then they get 2 extra dice when they're making attacks. Any web warriors do when they're making attacks for that round on anybody that has the slow condition on them.
Are there any other of the tactics cards, any other webs tactics cards that?
I mean, most webs blasters will bring Spider Tracker because that card's fantastic. They're gonna try to bring a lot of the defensive cards. So you're probably going to see Brace. You're probably going to see maybe Sacrifice. I've been running Disarm, which has been pretty good.
Fallback.
Some people will
is a
run
pretty common
R&D.
one.
They're going to run Fallback and Mission Objective. Basically anything that's going to be crisis relevant is probably what they're running. And then they'll have some whatever specific character tactics cards. Maybe they'll have Cat Spider, or if they're bringing Rhino, they'll have Robbery or something like that.
How about splashes? Are there any particular splashes that are really unique to or specifically well tailored for a webs warrior? I know, David, you've been putting Shang-Chi in your webs roster for some pretty good effect.
So, I mean, I think the best splash character in webs has to be Zemo. Zemo is stupid when he can modify skulls. It's ridiculous. And he's giving them a reroll so that all of a sudden now they have even more defensive rerolls. It's just ugh. Zemo's probably the best splash character in webs.
and it goes without saying, transitioning from TTC to splashes would be eyes on the prize and Bill, obviously.
Yeah.
Bill's good in webs.
Bill's good in webs.
Shock,
People have been running Hulk because Hulk is Hulk. He does Hulk things. I've been running Shang-Chi, which I really, really like Shang-Chi. Most webs rosters are gonna take a 2, at least 1, probably 2. And there'll be, any form of Toad Wong, Widow, Bullseye. I mean, they can run with almost any of the 2s. Okoye's fine in webs. Not that I see people running her, but she's fine.
Guess who you didn't mention? The worst model in the game.
Honey Badger?
Yep.
Well, she's diametrically opposed to being a pussy, so
Yeah. she doesn't
doesn't mean
do
she's not
anything
the
that
worst
they
model.
want.
And for those of you listening who had under 23 minutes for your Alex shits on Honey Badger, you may cash your ticket at the window. So I guess the last thing in terms of setting the table, and it's probably the obvious one, is crisis selection. So what crisis selection are webs looking to have, and why are they looking for those?
I mean, they're gonna try to run the most VPs that they can possibly put on the table, right? Because they want to try to score out before they die. So they're gonna run, you know, at least one of the 5-point extracts, probably spiders. Some web players don't like cubes. I don't really like cubes. That incidental damage kind of sucks sometimes. I've been running senators because it's 6 of them and like so good. I run paranoia. Um, but usually that's probably where they're going to be. They're going to be in the high scoring because ultimately with webs, well, in general, like your extract usually is going to determine the speed of the game because the extract is going to be the one that is going to have the most potential to score. So like if you have less, like if you have like researcher, it's going to score slower. So like usually your extracts will determine your speed of the game. So like they're going to try to take the largest ones they can. And then as far as secures go, most web players run scoundrels. I would imagine there are web players out there who don't, but I don't know why, because I think scoundrels is amazing for them. And then they're probably going to run anything that's going to spread you out. Usually the D's. I run riots and portals. But you could run um the Black Order one, Black Order Descends. That's
You could run a
fine
big
too.
black. You could run a big black dildo. That would spread you out.
Yeah, that spread it out
Yeah.
too. That definitely spread it out.
What throat lull is that?
Omega.
It's a one shot.
Okay. Anything else that we kind of haven't touched on in terms of sort of what web warriors are, so that we kind of know what we're talking about before we talk about what to do to counter them? And anything else that we missed, or that might need a little more discussion or attention?
I mean, they just have a lot of speed, a lot of mobility, a lot of extract control. So it's very easy to get behind and then just never catch up. And so that's something you have to be cognizant of.
Can confirm. Okay, so that's web warriors. That's kind of that it's what passes for the current menace right now. So you are getting yourself ready for a tournament. You are getting a list together. And you know that you're probably going to see at least one, if not more than one, web warrior players that you're gonna have to deal with. Let's start right at roster building first and foremost. What should you do in constructing a roster that takes into account how webs play the game kind of differently than everybody else, and be able to have an answer for that? What are some things that you should be thinking about when you're putting your roster together to address that?
I think the first thing you think about is definitely your crisis, right? So
Researcher.
yeah, well, here's the thing. So I guess it would depend on what your roster is going to be,
Mhm.
but if you're trying to make a scoring team, you have to be able to you either have to have a plan for webs or you don't bring the high scoring crisis. So like
So
probably don't play scoundrels if you don't think you have a better game plan than webs would have on scoundrels.
So what would be the example of a roster of another scoring roster that would have to take webs into account and how you put them together?
Something like Wakanda or Hellfire Club,
Okay.
or I mean, even Scory Avengers, right? Because Scory Avengers will play scoundrels because they're really good at it, and they can have a better plan on it than webs do. So
They have double shield throw and affiliation, which ignores cover. It's pretty good.
yeah, it's pretty good.
Okay. Okay. So some of it's crisis selection, either having a crisis that doesn't play into Webb's game, or being able to have your roster structured where you at least compete, if not be better at Webb's at what they're doing. So how about the actual roster composition itself? Is there something that you can be putting into other rosters, whether they're scoring rosters or attrition rosters or something in the middle, specifically thinking about webs that might be helpful in addressing it?
I mean, obviously, you can take the characters that ignore dice modification, like Agent Venom, Venom. Um, Venom's a little weird. I think Venom's really good, but if you end up on the web secures, Venom's probably not going to be very good at them, unless it's scoundrels.
I was just about to say he's pretty good at scoundrels.
Yeah, I was like, unless it's scoundrels, but like he's not very good on a D. He doesn't rotate very well. They probably just avoid him if they can. Um, but AV on the other hand, I mean, he's fast. He ignores their dice mod. He incinerates. Like he's got all the stuff that I mean, if you're looking specifically to tech for webs, I mean, AV is probably who you want to be bringing.
So playing
I
devil's
do like
advocate,
Taskmaster too, though. Like if you have a roster that has that either Taskmaster's affiliated or you feel like maybe Taskmaster might be okay here, like Taskmaster's pretty legit in the webs. His
do you think
spender is nasty.
do you think Venom picking up an extract and going sitting on a flank D? Like what does the webs do against that? Like I
I
have an
mean, if there's
extract and I'm controlling the point. I'm scoring 2 points if you don't come fuck with me, and I'm Venom. What does webs do against it?
I mean, maybe they plan to bring somebody like Spider Woman and just come up there with Spider Woman and make him drop his extract, right?
That's assuming they have Spider-Woman on the list
Yeah,
and they're bringing her to counter Venom, which they might not think to do if they're playing on a D and they think Venom sucks on a D.
yeah, that's true. That's true. I
I'm
mean,
just playing
I
devil's
don't.
advocate here.
I guess if you're playing like foes, maybe I would consider. I mean, Venom's still good. It's just weird with Venom, right? Because like if he starts getting pushed around and then he doesn't say he doesn't have his extract, say they make him drop it or whatever, and they can just ignore him, then it's kind of becomes whatever, right? But
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
he is
I,
very good into them.
I don't think he's worth a splash unless it's something very specific. Um, Something that's like trying to take advantage of like the counterattack, something like Shadowland Daredevil, where you can really maximize those rerolls.
Yeah,
Or,
or defenders. I like him. I like using him in defenders.
yeah. That's actually, I don't know why my brain said Shadowland Daredevil. I meant Defenders, but Shadowland Daredevil works too. Um,
The
but yeah,
Daredevil.
the Daredevil. The Daredevil threw me off. He's good with Daredevils.
Yeah, he's good with Daredevils. Yeah, ironically.
Okay, so
um, but I mean, he's. I think he's worth consideration if you were like looking. If you had some kind of cool thing you were trying to do with Venom, maybe. Like, I mean, Shield can do the whole like play Fury's leadership and aggressive Venom, right? So then he can aggressive and counterattack, which is pretty good too, right?
Yeah, I would say overall probably AV is Web's worst. Like pound for pound, AV is pretty good against Webs.
Yeah, he's Well, any bleeds, like bleed is so annoying for webs because they don't
Yeah, their
want to
health
shake
pool is
it,
very small.
and their health pool's very small. Like, yeah, bleed is really good on them. Um,
But
I
Venom
would
has it
say
too.
Rhino. Rhino's also another pick that I like in the webs. I like Rhino a lot in the webs.
Why is Rhino good into webs?
Well, one, because robbery is ridiculous, right? Robbery is just, I mean, you know that they're going to be trying to hold extracts, and robbery is just a way to auto make them drop an extract, and it throws them.
Right.
And it's like, it's really good. Um, and Rhino, he's got the size 4 terrain throw, which is like really good in webs. He's super mobile. He can play
He got
on any of the webs crisis. Like,
Yeah, he's got the stampede, which is a real problem for webs because
yeah,
they
yeah,
were
he can.
saying earlier, they want them to spend their actions moving to catch up, but Rhino getting a medium push that on that
Isn't
large
an
base
action.
is just so good.
Yeah, yeah. It's
No, it's not an action.
well,
There's
and he can throw the terrain that they want to use as cover, and he just is like I mean, he's good. He's good into them, and he's durable too, right? And he's got aggressive. So like, even if they do manage to like move him, he could still aggressive back.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I like Rhino a lot in the webs. Obviously you could start looking at the Mystic attackers. I mean, I think Shang-Chi is really good in the webs. Like most of webs range bands are 3, and he's gonna be counting blanks, and then like throwing Mystic attacks into them. Shang-Chi and staggering, he's pretty good into them. And I don't mind like, I mean, obviously any of the Mystic attackers, like they're gonna be good. Psylocke is Shout out to Psylocke. She's pretty good in the X-Men or in the webs. Psylocke freaking on Friday, Brian Psylocke like demolished um Miles, just like smoked him. Because she's just good. I'm trying to think if there is anybody. I guess Juggernaut is pretty good into them.
I don't know if I like Juggernaut in the webs.
Mobile.
But it's weird though. Juggernaut's got to have, you have to make you have to force them to interact with Juggernaut, because otherwise they just won't. So it's a little weird because they probably just make him drop his extract, but
Like the helmet
I don't.
prevents a web line, right? And then
I mean, he's tough.
they
He's
can't
tough,
really
right?
he's so big they can't impact webbing him, and
He's mobile enough
he's
to
mobile,
chase, right?
but he's 5 threat. That's why I don't like him in the webs as much.
Yeah, that's the other problem, right? You're
And
like investing.
one attack is just kind of
Yeah, it is kind of.
like an 8 dice
Well,
attack
and
can be amazing, but it can also just putz out, and then you don't have a
well,
second act or a second attack to balance it
and
out.
he's super vulnerable to Spider Tracker too, right? Because he's gonna want to move to get the extra dice, and then that's the time period when they can Spider Tracker away, and then maybe he just can't get in range of 2 of anybody. It's
Mm,
a bunch. I mean,
well,
maybe he has enough power to scoot, but
if he's gaining 2 power from the move, he's got to have, unless he's poisoned.
well, yeah. But I mean, like, even if you could like maybe there wasn't anybody who was already into after he moved, and since Spider Tracker's 4, you can use it to like basically get out of any range he could scoot into.
Yeah, maybe. I would imagine like a small move into a small push is enough to get you in the range of
It's close.
somebody
Yeah,
at a
it's
punch.
it's definitely close. Yeah.
One of those pussies. Just run away.
Run away and score all the objectives.
Okay, so
I guess other characters like they don't really like dealing with Thanos. Thanos is really annoying for them. Like
Why is that?
throws them. He's got all kinds of control. Like he can hit,
I think
and he's got
Old Thanos was that, but
old Thanos definitely when he could like cosmic portal everybody.
New Thanos, I don't know if he has that much control. I mean, a lot of people run reality, so he's got one control, and he's not very good on a D. So
Yeah, that's the other concern. But I mean, I think if you're doing like Red Skull Cabal and you're running Mind Space Thanos, you probably should play him at least in some of those circumstances. But like,
maybe
I
you
mean,
just get they go so wide on you though. You're taking 8 threat into Thanos,
yeah,
and they're
that
taking like
that is. I mean, that's
they've got
ultimately the issue, right? You need to always be cognizant of do you have enough bodies to score against webs, right? So like if you're going like 3 wide and it's like 18 or something, you probably don't want to do that because they're going to be at least 5 wide, maybe even 6.
Thanos is worth almost what Miles, Black Cat, and Gwen cost.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's almost as much as their core.
which is like well, and the I mean, I get ultimately too the other problem is cat staggers just like suck into Thanos. Thanos really hates cat staggers.
I've got 2 good counters that David failed to mention.
Okay.
First one would be a big wooden mallet. The second one is just a can of gasoline and a match.
You know,
So
You could
instead
also
of destroying models with weaponry, a table flip is another good one.
Yeah, I do like that one.
that's a pretty good one.
you guys are
You just what you do is you just flick their opponent's miles because his wrist joint is so weak. You
Fuck that
just
Oh,
guy.
model's not fully assembled. You can't use them.
That
Sorry.
little waist, that femi wristed wafy boy. Run away,
Yes.
Miles. Run away into the corner with your wafy little wrists.
My Miles has been pretty terrible actually as of late. Like he does he misses he can't hit anybody for anything. Just
Oh, I
like
thought you.
flailing
Well, he
around.
hit Bullseye. He did 1 damage to Bullseye, but then Bullseye killed him.
Yeah, exactly.
And like he also did 1-shot Bullseye with 6 dice.
He did on the first incoming, but then he just like folded after that. He just does I don't know. Sometimes Miles can be really good, and sometimes he can just be like, "Oh, well, that was great. I web swung, kicked, and now I got nothing else to do."
I mean, he is a 3 threat. I mean, it probably shouldn't be.
Um,
Yeah.
Voodoo's another character I hadn't thought about, but Voodoo's pretty good in webs too. He's got the mystic attacks.
Mhm.
His throw on his builder's really good. His spender is like just nasty into webs. So good. And I mean, and he can make them drop extracts, right? He's pretty good.
Voodoo's good.
maybe maybe a little brush. So kind of identified some specific characters or some specific things that are good counters. Um, maybe talk a little bit about some of the concepts in terms of why they're good. I know we've sort of talked about them off and on, but it's like so there's some mystic things, there's turning off rerolls, or so what are some things if you're putting your roster together that you should be thinking about in terms of tools to have to be able to have some counterplay into a web's roster?
I mean, you probably want some way to take extracts off of characters, whether it's like Rhino with robbery, or you bring one of the
Pyro.
webs that can steal, or you bring, I
Pyro.
mean, Pyro. Like, well,
Pyro's
Pyro's
really
just
good in
good
webs
in the
too, I
webs
think. Yeah, because the root, the
and the
slow,
slow.
incinerate,
And the slow.
and steal, all just
Yeah.
good things.
Yeah,
Quicksilver,
it's a lot of
maybe.
good things. I mean, you could even consider like Namor, right? He has a steal. I haven't played any games with Namor, so I'm not exactly sure how I feel about him. But I mean, he can steal.
Oh.
Pyro's kind of a pussy.
Pyro is kind of they usually webs will try to pick on Pyro if
Like
they
pussy
can.
on pussy violence. They can definitely
Yeah.
beat up Pyro.
Yeah, they definitely will.
Is
They'll
that in of
lay
itself
smack down on Pyro.
they're not doing the stuff that they want to be doing if they're focusing, even taking some time taking Pyro out, even though it's not that hard.
I mean,
to do?
he's got 3 physical defense with no defensive tech. He's got 10 health. Webs are primarily physical based. I
Yeah,
don't know.
Pyro's kind of squishy.
I mean, he's got
He is
range
kinda-
4. His firewall's range 3, so you kind of got to get closer for that. But I mean, Webs, if they want to be somewhere, they can be there. They're the most mobile team in the game, so
Yeah,
can't
definitely.
really hide from them if they want to come after you.
I think you also probably are looking at characters um who can either like exert like um they can threaten, like Hawkeye, for example. Hawkeye I think is pretty good in the webs because he can threaten a large area of the table with attacks that they don't really like.
Is he
And
though? Like to think about it, like 2 of the 3 models in their core have stealth, and then the other one just pulls them out of fucking range.
yeah, but he can hook arrow into 3, right? Like he can hook arrow into stealth, or you can bring Mark for Death and like just blow him up, right?
I think
I like the fact that Hawkeye slows and stuns and shocks. Like all those things are good.
probably
So, like,
the best condition to put on Webs is Incinerate. So
yeah.
if your affiliation has someone in affiliation that can give Incinerate, that's probably worth a consideration. Because you're not going to probably beat them on straight scenario. So Incinerate helps. It's the best condition for killing something.
Yeah.
And it's especially good against webs because they have so many rerolls. Rerolls has a lot of diminishing returns when you have your defense reduced.
Yep. And Hex is also pretty good too. Like most of the webs just don't. I mean, there's a lot of conditions that they don't like. So, I mean, if you got good conditions,
Hex is pretty rare,
probably.
but Incinerate, there's a fair amount of Incinerate characters.
Yeah, there's a good amount of incinerate characters. Definitely. Most affiliations have access to at least 1 or 2 characters that can incinerate.
Yeah, depending. But even like some splash characters are fine.
Yeah.
If you're really worried about webs. Depending on how much you want to invest in it. Like we said, Pyro is probably fine with the range 4 Incinerate.
Domino.
Yeah, Domino's pretty good.
Real good at it.
Domino's pretty freaking good.
And like we discussed earlier, Asian Venom is really good at it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
he
really
does have
good
the
at it.
grenade bounce. Domino's kind of weird because she doesn't get splashed that often. Pyro does get well. I haven't seen Pyro lately in a lot of lists, but for a minute there, he was like the stud. He was just in every list.
He was in a lot of
And you
lists.
guys all thought he was gonna be a 2 threat. What a joke.
Yeah, well, I also thought Shocker was going to be a 2-thread, so
He should have been. He has weak wrists.
we could go a whole episode on why the death of the 2-thread has been a problem for the game, but that's another story for another day. So, any other thoughts on roster building before we go into what to do if you actually see them on the table? So, you've any other thoughts in terms of sort of?
I mean, we should talk about tactics cards, right? Like things like Mark for Death.
Yeah.
Um,
Pyro steel. I like if you're splashing pyro, I think you got to put the steel in there. If it's Web Warrior extracts. It's just really good on them. I've almost beaten plenty of Web Warriors with it.
Well, and I would also say you probably want a midline grab of some kind because you don't because they can just threaten to take your extract super easy.
Yeah.
So having a midline grab, and which would involve having Eyes on the Prize or Cat Spider or whatever, or one of the characters that can actually midline grab.
So you're saying a mirror
Um,
match?
yeah.
Not everyone wants to play fucking webs, David. Jesus Christ.
Angela, online tune for you, please.
I'll just
But
take
yeah, something like
Namor
that.
over Angela.
I'm trying to think what other tactics cards are pretty good. I like. Um,
I mean, Mark for Death is probably the best
yeah,
one.
that's that.
It
Yeah,
lets you.
that's
It allows you to
definitely.
target Miles efficiently. Or the thing is now that 3-Peter exists, you could pretty much count on webs putting a Peter on the board.
Yep.
Either ASM or SSM. They're putting one on the board. So and Miles is always going to be on the board as well. So you're going to have two targets for. Obviously, you want to kill Miles over Spectacular, but
Sometimes Mark is good for popping ASM because ASM can be super freaking annoying.
oh yeah, for sure. I'm saying Miles over Spectacular. You want to target
Oh
Miles.
yeah.
I mean, if you can get an ASM with it, it's great for sure. Especially if you can stack and incinerate on him.
Yeah. Then it's stupid.
No rerolls
Um,
at all. No cover.
yeah.
One less dice with the Incinerate. Just gets better and better.
And he's 5 threat, so taking 5 threat off the board is pretty significant.
Well, and it also makes his movement slow. So
Yeah, true.
even if you don't manage, say your priority activation doesn't get him, he can't run away, which is
Unless they bring.
good.
Oh no! It doesn't give him the
He can
slow
web swing
condition.
3
It just becomes slow.
because he's a pussy.
Yeah, he can web swing 3, but I mean, it definitely hampers his movement for sure.
Run away!
Okay, so you've done all your teching ahead of time. You've thought through what you're gonna do. Now it's game time, and you are across the table from a webs player. And you don't have a webs roster. Let's take it two different ways. Let's say you have a score based team that's not webs. What are you thinking? What's your game plan in terms of how you're going to address this game?
Well, I think the priority roll is going to kind of determine a lot of things about because most of the time the scory teams are going to probably match extracts, but they may not be matching secures. Right? I
I don't
mean,
know. I kind of think the opposite.
yeah,
I think
maybe.
I think scoring teams are going to take scoundrels and
Yeah, they're going to take scoundrels. But I've
probably
seen
a D
people
at
run
least.
Infinity and other
Right. So you take scoundrels, Infinity, and probably a D.
yeah, maybe a D. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think scoring teams take E's or C's at all. It's got to
No, I
be a
don't think they
D.
do.
It's probably Scoundrels, Infinity, and a D, or Scoundrels and double D.
Yeah.
So pretty much mirror the webs. But I mean, I could see scoring teams taking scrolls
Yeah.
or like cubes,
Cubes. Yep.
especially
Hellfire really likes cubes.
especially Hellfire, right?
Yeah. if I really like cubes.
So I think the secures probably
X-Men
line
too.
up.
X-Men like
Yeah,
cubes too.
yeah. So I think the secures probably line up more than the extracts, generally speaking.
Okay, so you've got your team. How important is it to webs? Almost always are going to go wide, or are going to go wide. Yeah. So how important is it to be thinking about that and going as wide? Is it important to focus on going as wide as you can, or should you not let that sort of interfere with what your game plan is going to be?
Well, so what I would say is if you get priority, you probably want to pick your extracts unless you just think you're like terrible on the web secures. But I think you want to try to tamp down their scoring potential, right? And I think that's the way you got to do it because it's less likely that they're going to end up on like on the extract side, they're going to have, you know, 2 extracts that score 5 and 1 that scores 6 or all 3 that score 5, right? So there's only 1 secure that scores 5 and the rest are in the 4s and 3s. So if you can like limit the VP as much as you can, I think extracts is the way to go. So if you have prio, you probably take extracts unless I guess unless you're just like really bad at a D or scoundrels. But I would also say if you don't have priority, you probably want to go like when you choose threat, you probably want to go as low as you can because it condenses the choices that webs can make, right? Because like once they can start getting like 6 wide, it starts to get crazy.
Are we still talking about scenario versus scenario?
Yes.
Or is it?
Uh
I think some of this stuff's going to apply either way. But
yeah, some of it's gonna apply either
right
way.
now we're kind of focusing on you are a non-webs scenario-based team.
I mean, I don't think you out wide webs.
Yeah, I don't think you do either.
You have four
I think that's
affiliated threes that they run, and like the new school webs run 2/2 threats. So like nobody can out wide that.
yeah.
Okay.
So you're probably looking to
And
go like ideally like one more narrow and try to like with prio try to pick up a model at the top of the round so that you can even out the activations and still maintain prio to do it every round basically until they don't have until they're not wider than you.
So one of your focus then, if your focus then is you want to basically take one of them down as quickly as possible. You want to focus fire something.
Yeah, I mean, I think the non-web scenario teams can probably do that. Obviously, Hellfire can put in anyone they want, so they can put killing models in there. And
well,
then
and Emma herself
Wakanda,
is good into webs too, right?
who is?
So Emma herself.
Yeah. And then Wakanda, they can take some killy stuff too. So
Yep.
Okay. And then so as the game's going, that's one of the things you focus on. If you're a scoring team, do you just try to match and keep up with webs, try to get to some level of equality in terms of the number of models, and then just kind of try to play your game and get home faster than they can, or do you have to modify what you're doing somehow to take into account what webs is doing?
So I've been noticing with all of the games that I've been playing with webs, I've been starting to like I will look at the board state and if I get within about like between like if I can get to within 5 VPs of scoring out, that then I'll try to make that my round that I'm gonna like try to push over. It usually ends up being my webbed up round or whatever. So I think you kind of got to look at that and go, okay, if I see that I think that they're going to try to score out this round, then I got to try to figure out how to deny them score over necessarily just killing. I mean, you doing both is ideal, right? You want to kill and deny them score so that they can't just like push you out. Trying to think of other. I mean, obviously, as with most games, positioning is everything, right? Like, don't you don't want to get yourself into a situation where you have a model that is like just hanging out somewhere and not scoring anything because that's the webs are just going to ignore you. Like if you've got a guy that's just like standing somewhere and not scoring anything, they're just going to go around you. So you kind of want to try to be always thinking about how to stay scoring and knock them out, which is sometimes hard, but I mean, there's like lots of games where like if I see my opponent ends their model's activation and they're not scoring anything, I'm like, okay, cool. I don't have to deal with that activation now. I'm just gonna move on and do whatever I was gonna do anyway. Um You just
I
gotta
think
try
if
to
you're,
push through.
I think if you're a scenario team, you're probably trying to match. You're trying to get as much of an advantage round one, to offset their scoring. So you're trying to like reach parity or even try to break it, and then
Yeah, that's definitely ideal. Like if you can break parity with webs on round one, that's real good.
and some teams can do that.
Yes.
Like
Yes, they can.
Wakanda with Spirit gives them a ton of tempo. Where webs don't really have a ton of tempo round one. So
No.
Wakanda can definitely pull ahead early and then try to beat them up while still playing for the scenario. Hellfire. I mean, they don't have tempo round one, but round two, they definitely have a big shot in the arm between the late leadership trigger round one and the early leadership trigger round two.
Yeah.
They definitely have some power to work with to beat webs down. And I guess like Avengers scenario, like Steve 1 can definitely tempo out some stuff and probably hit parity. Sam lacks tempo. He's probably not gonna outscore webs round one, but he can probably get pretty close. And then it's just probably trying to beat the webs down while still playing the scenario game. I don't think you sacrifice points to kill them, but I think you're probably advantaged killing them. Like you're advantaged in the attrition aspect of it. So if you can, I mean, aside from the webbed up round, but if you can kind of keep neck and neck with them in scenario and just try to squeak out damage when you can, you might be able to turn an advantage against them.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts strategically on a scenario focused team going into webs before we kind of move on to the attrition based?
Bring mission objective.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Bring mission objective.
Fallback's also good against steals.
Yeah, it's good against steals.
So you're kind of trying to minimize as much as you can the use of their steals.
Sacrifice is also good. Any kind of bodyguards is great against their steals.
Yeah, I mean, going back to what you said, Patrick, if you're playing a scenario team and they're playing a scenario team, it's probably going to be a high score. It's probably going to be over by round 3
Yeah.
or possibly 4, because there's so many points on the board. It's very easy to close out a game in 3 or 4 rounds. So you don't have a ton of time to work with.
Right.
So if you can, any points you can mitigate is going to be good.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So now you're not a scoring team. You're either a little of this, little of that, or you're just an attrition team. You're a beatdown, and you're staring across the board at a Webs team. What are you thinking? What's your kind of broad game plan in terms of how you're going to deal with this game?
I mean, you're probably going to. It's tough to say. I think you probably want the Webs player to have priority because you want to pick threat. Because
Okay.
the threat in that matchup is going to be so important.
And theoretically, you should have at least one of the two crisis that, if it doesn't favor you, at least it's not tailor made for Webs.
Yeah.
So at least
Well, and if you're going to be an attrition team, you're probably going to run research because
right.
you should, because research just
Well,
is good for that. And Webs, I mean, I was looking at my Longshank statistics, and with Webs, I've lost every game of researcher and I've ever played in any event,
I believe that.
and I have lost every game at 15 and 16, but I'm undefeated at 18 and 19. So
So that really says a lot in terms of where the strength of the affiliation is and what you want to be pushing towards.
yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, going lower threat and stuff like researcher, gamma, I mean demons, like they don't they don't like these crises, and they're not even that fond of. They kind of hate Fisk. I mean, if you can build a team that plays Fisk well, man.
I know
But
I
it's
was
hard
hoping for
though.
that Friday, but no.
But the problem with Fisk is if they can score it, it can score fast. So you have to be careful. You just have a good plan, basically.
I think the answer is kind of nuanced because it depends on what scenario you're playing.
Yeah.
Right.
If you land on
I mean,
your blues, their reds, like if their reds are paranoia, you could probably go a little more narrow. But if
Yep.
the reds are senators, it gets a little tricky because you kind of want to be able to pick up senators when you can, but if you're too narrow, that limits your options because you can only hold one.
Well, let's talk through some of that, because I think that the probably the one of the challenging things is when you're an attrition based team and you're probably playing at a lower lower model count. So I mean, there is kind of a plan for if you've got your reds, or a plan if you've got their reds. So let's say you're an attrition team and you've got your reds. How do you want to maximize that? What decisions are you making to kind of try to maximize that?
It depends on if it's a researcher game or not.
Okay,
Yep.
If it's researcher, you don't give a shit.
right. So
Play whatever you want.
yeah, so I think we've established that researcher is real good Web's kryptonite. So take that out. So let's say it's not researcher. It's something else besides that.
So virus or Montesi?
Testy.
Let's see.
Alien ships.
Yeah,
Alien chips?
something an extract, a non-researcher extract that would be attrition friendly, a slower extract. So you pull one of those. How do you play that to your advantage as an attrition based team?
Well, do you have prio?
Answer it either way. You do have prio, you don't have prio.
Well, if you have prio, you got the first grab, right?
Mhm.
So if you have three extracts and you have first grab, you can break parity and then make the webs come to you. Because chances
Yep.
are they're not going to be able to steal round one. They'd have to have like some ridiculous shit happen for them to steal round one. I'm trying to like they'd have to have Wong with like I don't even know how they do it. Maybe,
You can do it with Wong and R&D, right?
but this is like so far fetched. It's not going to
It's
happen.
so far fetched.
They're not going to be able to
The
venom
other
blast
thing
in
you
round
can
one.
do is you can no matter the cost, a spender with or with Spider Woman, right?
I guess yeah, that's realistic. And another one might be like they move up Impact Web with Gwen, pull you, and
Yep.
then pass a power with Wong to like maybe Miles. He web swings up, kicks you for 3, and then Venom blasts you.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, that doesn't
Probably.
happen very often. That doesn't
Because
happen very often.
So if you can pick up 2 extracts out of 3, you can kind of have the webs play into you because they have to
right.
try to get
Yeah,
one back.
especially if it's like a D, you can just if you can take 2 extracts and then you can just go, okay, I have 2 extracts. I'm gonna guard these 2 points on the D, and then you have to come take them from me, or we're just gonna stay tied. Or well, no, you'd be losing. No, the
Right.
West are losing, so they have
Yeah,
to
the
come
webs
into
has to
you.
come into you.
Right.
Yeah, they have to come into you.
Which sounds at some level is kind of an overarching theme is you want to figure out something to make them come to you. And if it's getting up on extracts or whatever it is, that's the way that's kind of the one of the counters to that. So okay, so you're an extract or sorry, you're an attrition team, and you don't have priority on your extracts, on a slower extract. Then what's your game plan?
Well, I mean, you know that they're gonna take 2 of them, right? Because they're gonna have a center grab,
Yep.
and
Murder. Murder sounds
yeah,
like the option.
the murder is
Target extract carriers ASAP. I guess the silver lining is that if you're on their D, there's only 7 points on the board.
yep.
So they're gonna score 4, probably. So if they score 4 every round, it takes them 4 rounds. And if you can deny them an extract 1 round, you might be able to push it to round 5.
Yeah, and then they
So
can
it's
start
fairly
holding.
slow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if
Okay.
it's on Scoundrels, it's a little more high score, but there's a smaller box for them to move in.
Yep.
So you have fewer actions spent moving and more punching them in their pussy ass faces.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So now let's talk about the scenario where you've got their extracts. How as an attrition based team when you're dealing with that, what's your game plan? Let's start with their extracts, but you have priority.
Well,
Well, I mean, if it's one of their 5s, right, you can grab the mid one. So then you're forcing them to have to try to steal one of your back ones, which they can do. And so if you have an accurate plan on how to stop that, I mean, that's a pretty good thing too, right? Like,
Okay.
so you can have like a center grab who will walk up, center grab the mid, say it's a spider, and they can walk back and park themselves in front of the other spider so that like a medium base medium mover can't like double move and pick the spider up. So like a lizard, because I know a lot of web players will run lizard or even like a bill. They can't do it with that. So
Okay.
they have a
like
lot of
that's
long movers though. Look, they can move
yeah.
cat
I
up
mean they
there.
have a lot of long movers that can just double move and steal it, but those long movers are a little bit more squishy than
I don't know, man.
lizard.
Cat's pretty freaking
Cat's
annoying.
pretty tanky though. Cat's pretty annoying, but
And
I mean
stealth.
she can get she can get got if she goes and steals a back F too early. She can get definitely got.
Depends on the setup. The other thing is you're going to be on your scenarios, so the box is way smaller.
Yeah.
If they want to
Especially if it's
score
gamma.
scenario. Well,
Like-
I'm thinking. Well, yeah, gamma for sure, but I'm thinking like
Intrusions?
Demons is pretty good.
Yeah, demons is pretty good.
Because if they want to take their back, I mean, like I said earlier, webs don't want to be incinerated. So,
Yep.
them
And also, webs
voluntarily incinerating themselves is
webs also don't really want to be fighting, so you don't really care if you're incinerated.
yeah, it's less detrimental to you for sure. Especially if you can take immune incinerate characters like the aforementioned Voodoo or Bill.
Okay, so then they've got their extracts and they've got priority. Then is it this kind of the same thing that you do before? You know that they're going to probably break parity, so you just pick your target and go to Murder Town.
I mean, you can always do the thing. You can always make a plan to steal their back F. But you just have to make sure you have somebody that's durable enough to not get like punked. Which, I mean, obviously like a Bill or a Lizard, something like that.
But that's less of a risk against an affiliation who's not really built to do damage in the way that an attrition based roster would be. Or is it?
David Dice.
Well, there's that.
Hey, that no matter the cost, Spider Woman spender is pretty good on if they try to do that. They try to like steal your back F. Just walk up and spender.
So pick the back F on the non Spider Woman side.
Yeah, I don't hate it. You could even do it for 2 power, and then pick it up with somebody else.
Mhm.
Yeah,
you don't have to do all 3 to her.
Do you when you're putting your attrition roster together, do you obviously you want to give thought to going as low threat as possible? Do you intentionally go a little bit wider than you otherwise would go, just to make sure that you're countering what Webs is likely to put on the table? I mean, if it's something where you usually go 4, but you could go 5 in certain circumstances, do you think about doing that instead? Or do you just kind of stick to your game plan and work around it?
I think it depends on how many VPs are on the board, right?
Okay.
Like if say it's senators and one of your say it ended up you brought one of your secures as a 4, like madmen or something. So now you've got 10 VPs on the table.
Yep.
I don't think you want to go super tall.
Okay.
Like that just it's gonna probably be bad if you do.
Well, into an affiliation that has Black Cat, it gets tricky. Because if you're tall, Black Cat is kind of becomes a target for you because you don't want to get staggered all game.
Yep.
On your 7 threat model, that really sucks.
Yes, it does.
But also, they have other models who are picking up extracts and like doing the scory game. So you have a ton of targets, and it makes your target priority a little awkward.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you want to kill Miles, he's the leader. He's annoying. He can steal back extracts, yada yada yada. You got the people who are holding extracts. You got Black Cat who can stagger you and steal your extracts. I think you do want to go wider against webs, generally speaking.
Okay.
Unless you're on Researcher.
Right.
If you're on Researcher, do whatever you want.
Right.
Researcher's awesome.
Yeah. Researchers.
You can focus Black Cat. It's fine because like what they don't have any extract control. So taking out their extract Steelers is a non-issue. Black Cat can move way to the top of your priority list. You just knock her off, and then you just have a tall team against Webs minus Black Cat, and you just
Yep.
chew them up.
So what do you expect? What would you expect Webs to do to researcher? So David, when you've got your web squad and you're coming into researcher, how are you thinking about it? How are you attacking that game?
He's thinking about his wooden mallet.
Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, I haven't run into researcher in a while. So, I've been considering I'm probably like if I end up on researcher, I probably am trying to bring Shang-Chi because Shang-Chi can bully a researcher pretty easily. And so maybe that's the pick. I don't know. I have to get some games in against like a 15 researcher. Well, it wouldn't be 15 because I would always dodge it
Right.
if I have priority. So
Yeah, the last time I played Researcher was the timeline event that we did,
yep,
or I guess timeline restrictions,
Mhm.
and it was you and me, David,
Yep.
and we played 18 threat in that game.
We did.
I squeaked the win. I don't remember how I squeaked it, but I did. That was the last time I even played Researcher, I think, because even for squad goals, I didn't play Researcher once. Oh no, I'll take that back. No, I played squad. I played in squad goals where I got a new asshole from a Hydra Eye Hulk.
On research?
Yeah.
Thanks, Michael.
No, that wasn't Michael.
It wasn't Michael though.
Oh, you're talking about squad goals. Sorry.
Yeah, squad goals.
Yeah. That was the sleeper
was
agent
just
I Hulk out of nowhere from left field into Alex's face.
Yeah, thanks,
Totally
guys.
unassuming, unprepared, and quickly beat down.
So any other sort of broader strategic thoughts in terms of just thinking ahead, knowing that webs are out there, that they're doing their thing, and if you're going to be going to an event, or you're probably going to have to deal with that. Anything else that just kind of broader concept wise that people should be thinking about, or thinking through, or planning ahead to have a response for webs?
I mean, you're gonna want. I would say you need to have a plan to have some models who can chase. By chase, I mean like if somebody picks up an extract, they can go and get them and try to daze them and take their extract. So you probably wanting to be looking at some models that can at least accomplish that, like a Rhino, obviously. Um, I would say you always need to be cognizant of the board state. So like not like if they can get within striking distance of winning, I mean they're gonna try. So like you gotta be prepared for that. 'Cause, I mean that's what I did to Brian on Friday. I was like I think I needed 6 and I ended up just like scoring 6. So like
Well, and that's kind of the roster's kind of put together to do that. So you really have to be pretty laser focused on what the score is and what is out there to be done, knowing that webs webs have the ability to be able to make that happen. So you just, it's even more than most, you really need to be cognizant of where you're at with the score, and what they could do to win a game in that round.
yeah.
Okay.
I think
Any
an
other
They're
easy
definitely gonna try to close the game out as soon as possible.
an
Because
easy
like
inclusion would
especially
be. Go ahead, David.
once Miles goes down they start to like incrementally lose their toughness. So like
taking a reroll away
Yeah.
is pretty good.
take it, yeah, and the modify
And the
skulls too, right?
skulls.
Like
That
ASM
skull is big.
loves the modify skulls.
I mean, I think Miles and Peter reap the most rewards with that, right?
Yeah.
Because they have rerolls on top of the reroll. I don't think like Gwen doesn't really care that much about modifying skulls.
No.
But like if you take Miles off the board, like that's one of your characters who had rerolls anyway.
Yeah.
I think
Well, and I noticed it when I lost my Miles, it like I mean Zemo's still good, but like not modifying skulls with Zemo's.
yeah, Zemo's another one on the attack for sure.
Yeah. Well, and he has Master Swordsman too on the defense side.
Yeah, but they're in packets of one. So like if you are playing say Peter, you roll three dice, you have one success, one skull, one whatever. He can't use his spider sense to full effect because he can't reroll the skull. But if it's a Zemo roll, he can pick up that one and reroll the defense, and if he misses it, he can use his strategic genius to reroll that one.
Yeah.
Right. So it's I feel like it's losing the leadership, rerolling skulls is more detrimental to the guys who can reroll two or more.
Yeah, definitely.
Makes sense.
An easy inclusion for fighting webs if you're worried about them. I mean, it's not like a silver bullet or anything, but we were talking about the mark for death.
Mhm.
It just gives you more agency in an activation to try to take out their leader or deny them
An
a point
activation.
with an extract or an activation. Yeah, they're tough though. They're the opposite end of the spectrum. Anyone who hates sitting down and looking at like a Thanos or Cosmic Ghost Rider or Hulk
Double
or Nighthulk
kaiju.
or Malekith or any combination thereof should be equally as disturbed sitting down and looking at 7 models with Miles as the leader. Like it's just the complete opposite end.
Yeah.
Especially when you only have 4.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
They're definitely a terror. They're definitely an
They're
alpha
definitely good.
predator.
Right. Which is why if you're gonna you have to have a plan. And so that's one of the reasons we wanted to have this conversation is because they're important to think through and how to plan for.
I mean, they're one of the teams that are making some affiliations unplayable in a competitive environment.
Expand on that a little bit.
They just do what they do so well that someone who doesn't do it that well doesn't have the tools to do attrition as fast as they need to. Like that team is just obsolete. You can't like I guess a mid-range team. Like a lot of mid-range teams probably can't kill them fast enough and they can't hang with them and score. So and kind of same for the opposite end. They can't hang with kaiju lists on low scoring games. They just get their models chewed up. So
yeah, is it fair to say that we're at a game state right now where you kind of do have to pick a lane? You can't really be a jack of all trades roster, just because the scoring teams are that good at scoring and the murder teams are that good at murder.
I feel like there's maybe a couple affiliations that can hang with either or. They can flex. I don't know if they're top of the food chain, but I think they're pretty good. I think
I've been
Avengers.
having success with foes right now, and I feel like they're pretty mid-rangey.
Yeah. I
I
think
like foes. I like Avengers. I think they're a good mid-range team. I
I
think.
think Midnight Suns can play beatdown or scenario. They've got affiliated Black Cat and Voodoo,
Voodoo?
with bumps. Voodoo with a bump's
Yeah.
pretty good, but they can also go.
Voodoo
I
with
mean, they have
bumps and jinx.
Yeah, they have
I Hulk
eyeball.
affiliated with bumps and putting in other kaijus with bump. It's pretty good. I think they can play both sides.
Okay.
But I
Any
think
other-
there's not a lot. Most of those mid-range teams, I don't see them performing super well. In the most competitive environments, obviously. Whatever your weeknight game is, like, just bring whatever you want. You can play it. You're probably going to do fine, but if you're showing up and you're playing against really good players with really good lists, it's going to be tough. It's going to be an uphill battle if you bring something that's middle of the road and not super overtuned.
Any other kind of closing thoughts on webs before we wrap this up for the episode?
I mean, we're gonna do all this discussion, and then at the time of recording, right, they're gonna change all this stuff this week, and then all of this is gonna be pointless.
It'll be
I
super.
I
It'll
don't
be
know.
super
Maybe
interesting. I'll love it.
Let's hope.
they're gonna nerf everything, or they're gonna like just make some thing amazing, and everybody's gonna be like, "Holy shit!"
I feel like if there's anything that's about to get nerfed, webs feels like it's way down the list in terms of what that's going to happen. But I could be. I also thought Pyro is going to be a 2-threat. So well, what do I know? All right. Webheads, we very much like to hear from you what your thoughts are in terms of our web's the big problem. What are your plans on how to handle them? What are your plans on winning with them? Reach out and let us know. We'd like to hear from you. We can be reached on all the socials at Witty Bantercast. You can email us at wittybantercast@gmail.com. And of course, you can support us on the Patreon, patreon.com/wittybantercast. For $1 a month, you can get entries into the drawings, you can get priority roster dojoing, you can get questions answered, and you can help us keep the lights on, which we really appreciate. Make sure you get those entries in. Next episode, we are going to be announcing the winner of our next drawing, which is a big one, so you want to be involved with that. And we just want to hear from you. So thanks for being here, Webheads. Thanks for listening. And until next time, be good.
Kick Craig out. Get lost, Craig.
Fucking Craig.
Looks like he has a pacifier.
Kind of does.
He's like Rave Craig. He likes to do a lot of MDMA. Suck a pacifier, listen to techno.
Run around with glow sticks.
Yeah.
A lot of why his voice sounds the way it does.
He probably has one of those like masks that have the
The vapor rub?
eyes that they're lights that
Oh.
change to stuff.